right, who helped found SNCC, who marched with Marion Barry and Stokely Carmichael and Martin Luther King, and the list goes on and on and on. And he will tell you today that he feels like this country's at 1954. And so if you want to talk about somebody...
But that doesn't mean it is. Well, you said he feels that way. That's ridiculous. Boy, he's really, I mean, it's a good strategy. Like, while the Democrats are getting all this bad publicity, just shut up. He doesn't usually do something that smart.
It's like that scene.
Last time we watched Bill Maher shred woke MSNBC hosts for their hypocrisy. Now, it's CNN's Bakari Sellers in the hot seat. You know, the guy who pulls out the race card every time he's losing a debate? He went head-to-head with Ben Shapiro, and let's just say it did not go well for him. Shapiro, backed by some sharp counterpoints, completely dismantled Sellers' one-sided takes, was both brutal and hilarious. We're breaking it all down. Moment. But before we jump in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss a takedown like this.
The Ben Shapiros of the world. Yeah. These people who don't necessarily have the intellect to have honest discussions, but but yet they're able to become millionaires because they're actually just circularizing and promulgating this.
To set the stage for what happened when Ben Shapiro and Bakari Sellers finally faced off on Bill Maher's show. In the clip you just watched, Sellers took a jab at Shapiro's The award-winning Daily Wire host doesn't meet his high intellectual standard. Bold move, right? But when it came time to go head-to-head on Maher's show, let's just say the audience quickly figured out who was actually running. Low on brain cells. Don't take my word, just listen for yourself.
Many confounds when it comes to these particular issues, and unless you remove the statistical confounds, you end up with trying to blame vague, shadowy figures like implicit bias, which are innately, insanely difficult, if not impossible to measure.
I don't know what
I mean about CNN. Ben Shapiro wasn't exactly speaking in ancient hieroglyphics. He was simply breaking down the fact that the race debate isn't some one-note issue. If you don't actually dig into the layers, you end up blaming everything on vague, shadowy forces like implicit bias, which, let's be real, is about as measurable as a Bigfoot sighting. Where's the lie? The truth is, the race debate is far more complex than these media talking heads want to admit. But sure, let's just pin it all on some invisible boogeyman. Even after completely missing the point, Sellers still had the nerve to take jabs at Shapiro. See how that worked out when Bill Maher decided to step in? Watch this.
All you have to do is ask my father, who literally was shot in the Orangeburg Massacre, right? Who helped found SNCC, who marched with Marion Barry and Stokely Carmichael and Martin Luther King, and the list goes on and on and on. And he will tell you today that he feels like this country's at 1954. And so if you want to talk about somebody...
But that doesn't mean it is. Well, you said he feels that way. That's ridiculous. It is. Come on.
Ben Shapiro wasn't saying anything radical. He was simply making the case that we should focus on real issues of racism, instead of getting lost in pure emotion. Because let's be honest, feelings don't always match reality. Just because Bakari Sellers' father feels like America has regressed to the 1960s, doesn't magically make it true. And credit where it's due, Bill Maher actually called that out. But am I surprised? Not one bit. The woke crowd has always put emotions over facts, ignoring real data whenever it challenges their narrative. Case in point, these are the same people who insist that identity is whatever you feel it is. If a black man suddenly feels like he's a white woman, he must be one now, right? That's the kind of logic, or lack thereof, they push. It's not about truth, reason, or actual solutions. It's about controlling the narrative, and the second you push back, you're labeled hateful, ignorant, or worse. Meanwhile, the rest of us are just sitting here wondering, when did common sense become offensive?
The ridiculous notion is for either one of you all to have the audacity to believe that you understand what the experience is to be.
I have to object to that.
But you just said
I cannot talk about it because I am not part of a group. I am a sentient human being. You're right. There's two ways you cannot understand something. One is to be too far from it. We're too far from it. We can't see like you can. One is to be too close to something. And then sometimes you can't see it accurately either.
The idea that you can't talk about racism unless you've personally experienced it is beyond ridiculous. By that logic, no one could discuss poverty unless they've been homeless, or debate crime unless they've been mugged. That's just not how rational discussions work. And here's the kicker. Just because someone is emotionally invested in an issue doesn't automatically make them right. Every group has its own biases, which is exactly why open dialogue is necessary to find real solutions. But do race hustlers like Bakari Sellers, Joy Reid, and Sunny Hostin actually want that? They don't profit from unity. They thrive on division. Instead of fostering honest conversations, they push race-baiting narratives that fuel resentment and keep people locked in a victimhood mentality. Because let's be real, if racism suddenly wasn't the insurmountable crisis they make it out, what would they have left to scream about on primetime TV? This isn't about progress. It's about power. The more they convince people they're oppressed, the more control they hold. Meanwhile, real solutions get ignored, and the very people they claim to represent left stuck in the same cycle with nothing to show for it.
Close to something, I am that.
I know.
And so, but what I am saying though is for you to discount my father's experience and say
I'm not discounting it.
And to say it was silly.
I'm not.
No, he was shot.
No,
Were
shit.
you shot?
No, but he's still alive. Like he's
Okay.
right here. Like
Right, but the idea that if I were to say to you, as a Jew, that the experience of Jews in the United States today is worse than the experience of Jews in Europe in 1939, I would not be stating accurately.
Correct.
It's not true.
That's
and it's
right.
also not true to say that the experience of black people in America in 2024 is worse on a general level than the experience of black men in 1954 in Alabama. That's just crazy.
But I mean, I think
This is what happens when race baiters rely on emotions instead of actual arguments. The moment they face real debaters like Ben Shapiro or sharp hosts like they start stammering, fumbling, and scrambling for a comeback. Just look at Bakari Sellers. When your entire stance is built on feelings instead of facts, it only takes a little push for it to crumble. Take the 1960s, for example, a time when racial injustice was brutally real. Black Americans faced legalized segregation under Jim Crow, were denied voting rights through literacy tests and intimidation, and risked their lives simply for demanding equality. Think about the Selma March, where peaceful protesters were beaten by police just for standing up for their rights. Now fast forward to 2025. Black Americans hold high-ranking positions in government, business, and media. Laws explicitly banning racial discrimination are in place. Diversity initiatives ensure representation across nearly every industry. Is racism completely gone? But is it anything like the 1960s? Not even close. Yet people like Sellers act as if nothing has changed, pushing the same tired oppression narrative to keep their influence alive. Because let's be honest, if they openly admitted real progress, what would they even have left to talk about?
Really, I mean, it's a good strategy. Like, while the Democrats are getting all this bad publicity, just shut up. He doesn't usually do something that smart.
It's like that scene.
Sums up Bakari Sellers perfectly, because at this point, he's just talking in circles. No one is saying that life is all sunshine and rainbows for Black and minority communities. There are still real injustices that need addressing, racism included. But claiming that America has somehow regressed to the 1960s, that's about as absurd as a velociraptor figuring out how to open a door in Jurassic Park. Terrifyingly dumb and completely unrealistic. Here's what many people miss. Sellers' entire career depends on playing the victim. Just like Sonny Hostin and Don Lemon, his influence comes from convincing people that nothing has changed, that oppression is as rampant as ever, and that they alone are the voices of the struggle. But the moment someone challenges that narrative, especially because for them, the real threat isn't racism disappearing. It's people realizing that it's not 1965 anymore. If racial progress was openly acknowledged, what would they even talk about? They'd risk losing their TV slots, book deals, and carefully crafted image as truth tellers. That's why when someone like Ben Shapiro dismantles their argument, because at the end of the day, it's not about solving problems. It's about keeping the narrative alive, no matter how far from reality it actually is.